Hey guys, welcome to the session on Coffee with Prabh. And today we have a special guest which I follow from last 5 years. And I could not able to, I don't know, its dream comes true to have Mr. Dr. Anton, a security advisor at Office of CISO Google Cloud. And before Google, Anton advised 100 of CISOs as a distinguished analyst at Gartner and led the security solution at Chronicle Security. And why I'm follower of him is because he published 3 books which is on logging, SIEM, and PCI. And he's one of the industry clearest voice. I repeat, a clearest voice on modern threat detection response. People for them it's a new concept, detection engineering or threat detection, and Anton has did the research on that, and he's also do a lot of podcasts on Google Security Podcasts, and I also listen to those podcasts also, Anton, and I got a lot of learning from there also.
Hmm.
So, welcome to the show, Anton. And I believe it's your first podcast you're doing for India or something like that, because I have not seen much podcast about you in India. You did that?
No, actually, I was on one podcast, and the way I know it was recorded from India was that it was the host told me that she's recording it at 10:30 in the evening, and
Okay.
and for
Wow.
me it was 10, and then like half an hour. That's India.
That's great. And that's why, I did a lot of preparation for this podcast, Anton. And, I'm a big follower of you, especially your work contribution you did for Google Cloud Security Podcast, because
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of your works there. And I also follow you on Twitter and the way you write about the post. So actually today we are talking about something around SIM to cloud native detections, which is right now a lot of
Mhm.
buzzword. And we also need to know the lessons from the chronicles and beyond. So before we jump into this, and then I want to understand one concept, which is a lot of buzzword around what is cloud native detection. There's a lot of word around cloud native detection. So can you just explain in a very simpler manner? It will be great honor for us.
So this is interesting, and to be honest, I haven't really used the term in exactly like that. I did use the term like in conversation, but I don't think it's like a coined term like SIM or EDR or
Okay.
some others.
Hmm.
But what I've observed over the years, actually starting from my late time at Gartner, which I left in 2019, so my analyst creds are maybe not that current, is that some of the companies that built SIM products and other threat detection products, maybe even EDR, to a lesser extent, started on premise, and then they kind of realized that there's this whole cloud thing, and they need to, journey to the cloud. And I don't know exactly what is the opposite of cloud native.
Mhm.
I think I sometimes joke that it's a cloud tourist, somebody who just shows up in the cloud with his on-premise baggage, and maybe he's moving, maybe he's there temporarily. It's kind of not clear. So I don't know. The cloud tourist is kind of what I occasionally use humorously. So
Okay.
some of the companies have built their businesses, built their technology stacks on premise, and then
Hmm.
they moved to cloud. So cloud native is, of course, somebody who was born in a cloud. When Chronicle started in 2000, launched in 2019 and started a little earlier, it was one of the first, but not the first, cloud native platforms that was
Hmm.
built as, of course, software as a service. Cloud is the only choice.
Okay.
It is occasionally in our early years, I had people ask, can I have everything you have in Chronicle but on prem? And of course, the answer to this is kind of hard no, because a lot of this is inherently built to the type of backend we use, type of compute we have available for the backend. So in this case, cloud tourist in theory can go to cloud and back. If you're a
Okay.
cloud native, it is it's impossible or incredibly difficult. In most cases, I would assume impossible to sort of say, oh yeah, I'll have it as an appliance. But
Hmm.
it does give you superpowers, of course, because you, just as when you search Google and Google doesn't say, oh yeah, you need to search a lot of the internet, it will take a while. That's not a thing since the birth of Google. You just search Google and you get the answer, right? But if you search your on-premise SIM, you change the query for 24 hours to 6 months, and the SIM says, whoa, don't do that. 6 months query would take a long time. What are you doing, man? Don't. But I need to search 6 months. I'm sorry, guys. Like, this is what I have to go check for some incident history or something else, or match patterns or match threat intel. And cloud native SIM, like, well, Chronicle, now I'm putting my vendor hat on briefly, would not tell you, sorry, you're searching too much. wait, or it would just search, just like Google searches. Similar to other tools, when I'm looking at online office suites, whether it's ours, Workspace, or others, they don't tell you, hey, you're editing a long document. We need to buy servers. Like, but I've seen SIEM vendors who moved to the cloud after building their business on-prem kind of say, oh yeah, no, you contracted for 10,000 EPS. You want to send 50. We need to upgrade your environment. But like that's not how cloud works. Sorry. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's not cloud. And they do say that they're a cloud tool, that they're available at blah 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 URL sim.com, whatever, but it's not cloud. So to me, when I see these things, I am occasionally known to humorously call it fake cloud or something else. And to me, this is maybe too offensive because ultimately some people just don't want to manage hardware. They don't really care if it's cloud native because if they never plan to send more data, they don't really care about scalability. They just care about not managing hardware.
Hmm.
But to me, that's not cloud native. That's not cloud native SIEM, cloud native detection. It's sort of like a cloud installed or cloud deployed or something. I don't know. The point is that cloud native, it just works. And the expectation is you want to search, it searches. You want to detect, you apply the pattern. You say, I want this rule to apply today. Here's today. I want this rule to apply to the future. Here's the future. I want this rule to apply 6 months back. Here's the result. To me, that's what I expect. And if I don't get that, I'm starting to be suspicious that whatever people sell to me as cloud is not really cloud. Just
Hmm.
because normal applications, and leaving SIEM aside, that are cloud native, don't complain about file too large, we need to buy servers. But cloud native detection to me is the platform that was built like that, built with, to not use a cliche, full power and full resources of the cloud at its disposal. And today, it's obviously not a rarity in the threat detection space. Weirdly enough, most EDR vendors have migrated to cloud even before SIEM vendors. But they may have migrated, but here's the funny one. I do remember one EDR vendor in particular that was really proudly offering storing telemetry for, wait for it, 7 days. And I was like, what? Wait a second. You say you're a cloud native tool and you obviously do, your agents produce a lot of telemetry, but 7 days, that's not a lot. And like, do you even cloud? like like and they were definitely cloud native, but they were just not very efficient with storage, or they didn't know how to scale storage. So if you, again, vendor had briefly on, if you use Chronicle and you sort of assume that the data would be there for a year, and you don't get to complain about how expensive stuff is to store, or do we need to buy more hardware. So to me, cloud native releases the teams from all the upkeep, all the maintenance, all the tuning of storage, tuning of performance, just like your office workspace or office in the cloud just works. Your cloud SIEM, cloud threat detection platform should just work. And you should be able to say, I want 24 hours. Sure. I want 7 days here. I want 6 months. Yes, of course. I want 2 years. 2 years of storage would involve money changing hands for sure, because ultimately, now that some people, boast about data lakes, I keep reminding them, hey, if you're storing something, somebody somewhere is paying for hard drive. There's no store something magically. I'm talking about some federated log search when people say, oh yeah, we'll just federate. Well, somebody somewhere is paying for hard drive, dude. Like, you can't not pay for hard drives if you store stuff. And whether these are, whatever type of storage is immaterial. The point is that if you're storing for a year, somebody somewhere is buying hard drives. Sorry, a long rant, but cloud native to me is something that just works, just like other cloud applications, and it doesn't pretend to be in the cloud.
And that's excellent insight. And with the continuation of that, when it comes to detection response, I believe they work on two important metrics: the data, storage, and computation. I think cloud meet that criteria, and that is the reason the people prefer to go for the same, which is based on cloud, because by end of the day, they need a storage, they need a computation,
Mhm.
uh, they need a performance. So
Yes.
you cannot scale up your resources on on-prem at one point of time. There will be a lot of bottlenecks and all that. So can we say in that way, like that's why the things got trending here? We're talking about the buzzword regarding this cloud native detections and all that. In future, we can see like when we need to work on the huge data, the computation storage is the demand and cloud meet the criteria, the same way we have for AI.
Yep. Yes, exactly. And I don't want any of this kind of upkeep and performance tuning tasks. And I want the things to I need to detect threats just to work.
Mm.
If it's a rule, it's a rule. If it's an algorithm, it's an algorithm. If I'm matching threat intel, I'm matching threat intel. If my agentic AI of the near future wants to access the data, I don't want things to wait or crash because of performance limitations or anything of that sort. So to me, this is why it's kind of both the expectation, the hope, the dream, and of course the reality for many clients who use these type of tools. But
And
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, go ahead, Sand, and then go ahead.
Yeah, it's this sort of like the weird part of this, possibly insightful part, is that for some people that's been reality for many years, and some people are just discovering this now, and they say, "Oh, do you mean I can just like load log data and search it, and it would come back, and I wouldn't have to wait and take a vacation or a coffee break?" And the answer is, yeah, of course. Like, why would you expect that? But the reason they
Mm.
expected that is that for the previous 20 years, that's what they had.
And that's the reason, with the coffee, it remind me one scenario. I'm sorry, but I am a kind
Hmm.
of person who always believe in scenarios. And then
Hmm.
imagine, our listeners are sipping a coffee on Monday morning, when their phone lights just up, hang up with 50 red alerts, from a tool,
Hmm.
and they barely understand. Okay, and before we get into technical, we uh, can you paint the big picture? Why does modern detection and response matter to any company with a login screen? And do you have any kind of a real examples where a good detection can save the day, or which can, from the silence of cost millions and everything?
So you're kind of asking about the general sort of like a motivational speech for detection, for threat
No, no,
detection,
no,
and of
no,
course I haven't given that for many years,
no,
but
no.
yeah.
No, it's more from the functionality point of view. I thought, do you want to share any kind of expertise on that area where we can save time, and you can share your expertise to save time, and we can filter out the logs which is required for the function, not a motivation speech. Yeah.
Sure. So let me try in a somewhat interesting place.
Yeah.
When I started with SIM, a lot of detections we had were handwritten rules. They're rules written by
True.
quote unquote experts who, observe what's going on and eventually create a rule that says something like, if somebody fails to log in 10 times and then succeeds, you should alert. And of course, that had implications for log data. And this was kind of fine for a while, and then people realized that for many scenarios that doesn't work or doesn't work very well.
Hmm.
And then we sort of had this big wave of people showing up with all sorts of machine learning, anomaly detection, rethought for 2010s. We're talking still 2010s. And they pushed hard on ML, and there was this vendor at RSA maybe 10 years ago who had this little signs that said no rules.
No
They
rules.
lied that all detection would be ML. And a few more years passed and people realized that that completely failed. No,
I
okay,
agree.
not completely failed. It failed to take over. It succeeded at addressing the use cases. I'm not writing any login failure counter rules anymore because we can use ML for that. But what happened is people realized rules kind of worked but didn't. ML, yeah, kind of worked but didn't. And the next big wave of popularity was, let's just have robust threat intel feeds, and we
Hmm.
pay quote unquote more experts to develop threat intel about attackers, and then we'll um, funnel the intelligence into rules, and we'll have rules that reflect up to date hacker attacker tradecraft. People did this. People kind of forgot they had ML. People forgot they had expert written rules. They just like doubled down on TI. And it kind of worked really well, and then it kind of didn't, because obviously, for some detections, you're not going to get the IP address for the attacker or what registry key they would touch or any other. I mean, I'm using the very naive take on TI, but even the broader preferred infrastructure that they use or whatever else, you would still not know that. And then my suspicion is that today people are realizing, forget handwritten rules, forget ML, forget TI. Let's just do some kind of Gen AI magic.
Hmm.
And the reality is, most environments that work well with detection use all of the above. And all of the above is always the answer. You constantly rebalance where you write broad patterns by human hand, where your Gen AI learns something and writes a broad pattern or maybe a more narrow pattern, where you use classic ML. We still use classic ML. We still use observing certain behaviors and flag anomalies. And then, of course, threat intel is hugely useful for environments where, well, we just know what the attacker would do, so we'll watch for that. The point is that the theme I'm expressing here is that for detection and response, for detection domain specifically, the answer is almost always all of the above. If you have a list and the question comes, which of these you should use? The answer is probably all of the above. I mean, because it's not, I don't think any one technique has quote unquote won and became predominant. Like ML people really tried. They really tried and they kind of didn't succeed. And most of those former user behavior analytic vendors have built pretty robust rule engines to be more like a classic SIEM. And then, of course, they later built the threat intel integrations. So this maybe is too broad. I can try to narrow it down further in our discussion.
And Mr. Dr. Anton, I think that give the clear message to all the people who watching this podcast that there was a lot of fear around, the AI will replace the jobs. I don't think so. AI will replace the jobs. AI can help you to improve the productivity, but if you are a person with a good skill set around the research, detection rules and all that, or doing the active analysis and all that, I think still the jobs for those people are there. AI going to
That
replace
is my
definitely
impression.
uniformity.
Yes. Yeah. This is my impression, and I think that I use the word impression because in the rapidly changing world with AI rapidly changing, it is an impression I have today, and I feel like that's a fun discussion that I've had quite a few times, including last time yesterday, where people show up with this argument, and when you try bringing up some challenges and some problems people have to address, they bring up a really strong counter argument they have. But AI is developing so quickly, you're judging today's state. You're right today, but notice the whole, maybe not exponential, but notice the growth curve. And you're judging today's AI, and you're maybe correct that it wouldn't do it. But what about in a year? And there's no immediate argument to say, well, no, in a year it won't happen either. But to me, the way I counter the counter argument is by pointing out that in my late Gartner days, 2019, people would call me sometimes I also cover vulnerability management. And they would say, hey, Anton, and I'm completely making up the conversation. I'm not leaking anybody's IP. It's made up, but it's kind of inspired by a true story. Hey, Anton, we patch Windows twice a year. Do you think that's frequent enough? And then in my mind, I call this time machine inquiries. Like the person stepped into a time machine in 1998 and he came out in 2018 and he still has security questions about how to do patch management, and he wanted to ask them. And my reaction was, no, actually, that's a little too infrequent, and most risk profiles of most companies would not call for patching Windows twice a year, blah, blah, whatever. The point is that legacy environments and the pool of the legacy is really strong. And in the battle of IT circa 1998 and the AI circa 2028, I would bet on the legacy. I would not bet on AI. Because, and this is maybe I'm old, maybe I'm weird, maybe I've seen too much of the enterprise environments in my Gartner days, but some of the stuff that people still run is so bizarre and inscrutable that I'm not sure that even the dramatically smarter machine intelligence would figure out what and how it works and would be able to handle it. Humans would need to be at least in the middle, if not all around. This is what this is my story, and it's what I'm sticking to in 2025. If we have this conversation in December next year and things dramatically change, I'll eat my crow meat. I'll say I was wrong. It's fine. But today, I feel like even significantly enhanced AI would hit the wall of old legacy environments and would lose, would still need
And that's
humans.
why we said, Anton, even in the security, even in the governance, we say people is the last line of defense. So that's why in the AI also, in order to fine tune your data, governance, controls, even we're talking about hallucinations, data bias and all that, by end of the day, it will be validated by the human only. And coming to the detection engineering, if we're using AI agentics and all that, it definitely required fine tuning from the people who working on those data pointers. Can we say like that?
Yes, and I mean, by fine tuning, you can always say, well, yes, today, but what about next year?
Hmm.
I still sense that the even next year we would have enough of this type of
Hmm.
legacy constraints that you
Okay.
can't just machine intelligence out of it.
Hmm.
Again, as I said, not I'm not trying to pretend that this answer is forever answer, but it's
Hmm.
my 2025 answer.
Okay. That's good. And follow with this question, how the legacy SIM thinking must be changed in 2025 or 2026.
So this is let me start where legacy sim does not change, or where
Yeah.
the classic sim wisdom is still true.
Hmm.
So a few months ago, I sort of rewrote my, actually, funny enough, 2013 blog about output-driven sim.
Hmm.
So my new blog was called Output-Driven Sim 13 years later. And it started with me pointing out a good number of years ago, while still at Gartner, that a lot of people shoved data into SIM and then kind of hope for the best. And then at the time in 2013, my reaction was, it's really hard to make it work. Storage is too expensive for that. And you would never figure out what the data means and whether you use schema on read, schema on write. This problem is immaterial. If you unthinkingly collect, you're not going to have a good time. And I thought today, with dramatic improvements to intelligence, dramatic improvements to storage, dramatic reduction in storage costs, you can. And and you can, but I still don't think you're going to have a good time. So I sort
Hmm.
of redid the output driven sim for 2025 a little bit, because I felt like the core of the idea is still valid, whether you have a massive data lake or any other type of storage. If you're storing this, somebody's paying for hard drives. Back to
True.
this argument. If it's a cloud based SIM, which I think yours should be at this point, you're paying the cloud provider to pay for hard drives. So they may be really efficient. They may have absolute magic to store things efficiently. And we here do, of course, but we still pay for hard drives because
Hmm.
stuff is stored on media somewhere. And if you say 1 year retention, you're paying for hard drives. And that means I would still keep essential pillars of output-driven SIM today, even though, of course, I'll collect for threat, I'll collect for context, I'll collect for incident response investigations. There would be things beyond detection in my
True.
needs, and maybe it's compliance, but I should have a need for everything I collect. That survived. I think that one bit of wisdom that is really interesting. It was very popular, then it was not popular, and then now it's popular again. And this is the centrality of endpoint. If we take a time machine now in 2025 and we fly to 2005, and we'll look at the SIM environment, and there would be very little endpoint data. There would be server logs, there would be Windows logs. There, in some very few environments, there would be the client like PC logs, but
Hmm.
there won't be much from the endpoint. Now, if you fly forward 10 years to 2015, in the day and age when EDR was really popular and was rising in popularity rapidly, a lot of people pivoted to endpoint, and they said, "Oh yeah, I want EDR. I want EDR. EDR is the central pillar." I had an argument with somebody from CrowdStrike at a Gartner summit many years ago about this point. He said, "If you have EDR from us, and ours is the best, of course," they said, "you'll deploy it everywhere. You'll be good. You don't need SIM." I'm like, "No, that's not true. What about the routers?" And he said, "Okay, if somebody hacks your router, are they going to steal any confidential data? Probably not. They're going to hit the server or storage. They can do fun things to you and painful things if they own the router, but ultimately doesn't have any data. So if they go pursue the machine that has data, it would be instrumented. So our EDR would catch it." So we argued further. But the point is that this assumed a very endpoint centric world, which 2015 world was. And today we are moving again away from that. Like you have microservices, you have containers, you have all sorts of SaaS, all sorts of purposes. And today, if you can't probably convince me that if I have a really good EDR and I do really good monitoring, I'm good. Like, I don't think so. I think that's why I am realizing it's still popular, but I'm realizing the days of this are numbered, and where you can be like EDR centric and SIEM is auxiliary. No, I don't think so. And that's why some EDR vendors today have acquired log management and SIEM platforms, and they're
Yeah.
ultimately providing EDR. And by the way, we have a SIEM, because to me, they also see the writing on the wall for the endpoint centric world. Again, it's not going to die next year, but the signs are there. And to me, the signs indicate that if you primarily do the endpoint, you're not going to have a good time. And to me, this is a weird and a somewhat interesting wisdom of something that was true, then was not true, and then now it's true again.
Hmm.
As far as something that's just completely new, that the SIEM engineer from 10 years ago would not understand. Let me think about it. This one. I need to think a bit. Something that's just not like not a thing at all 10 years ago. I'm tempted to say that years ago, application monitoring was really uncommon. And in my very old time back in as a SIEM vendor before Gartner, I did have people who said, I'm going to collect SAP logs in my SIEM, or I'm going to collect Siebel logs or some CRM system in the SIEM. And some people did that, but like very few people did that. And then even fewer people did that because they all went for EDR. And today I'm sensing there's this new space being born called ADR, application detection and response. And my impression is that people are realizing that in some versions of the future, unless you do application monitoring, you're screwed. You have no recourse of any kind. You're not going to sniff traffic. You're not going to do agents on endpoints. You have to do applications. So to me, that's probably the new thing. And one other thing that survived the test of time was my tri-pillar model for SOC, or SOC visibility triad: network, endpoint, and logs. And I swear, I'm looking at the log draft for 2 years. So since 2024, and I'm trying to refresh it for 2025. And I'm agonizing over whether application is a new pillar. I think it is for some environments, but it's going to happen really soon, that unless you monitor deeper application telemetry, you're just not monitoring.
True.
So that to me is maybe the new thing.
And thanks for the great insight on the part you talk about the integration and all that. And that's why I made some notes on that. And something new for me today I found is application detection response, because
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether both are same. We call it as a RASP, runtime application security protection, and application detection response. I'm not sure whether both are same. But
Yeah.
as you said about, Prab, Anton, Legacy's SIEM, when you're talking about, has some challenge with the integration of its SAP and all that.
Mm-hmm.
What about today? When you're talking about the microservices and containers, modern architecture is running on microservices and all that. And sometimes what happen, vendors are not comfortable to reveal the codes and everything, especially in the case of
Mm-hmm.
closed source. So how do you see we can do the integration in terms of threat detections and all that?
So this is a genuinely tricky one, and there is a category of people who think that SIEM has no chance there, and
Hmm.
you do have to buy a separate platform.
True.
I am not like, again, obviously these are ADR vendors would be of that opinion, because they sell it. But I think that to me it does raise a lot of tricky challenges, but
Hmm.
I don't think that the answer is no, SIEM doesn't work because it's application. I
Hmm.
think that enough SIEM vendors are slowly evolving in that direction.
Yeah.
And this is where I see kind of like a more interesting work being done in this area to monitor applications in depth in a SIEM. It is not a common practice, and it's certainly not a common feature set for a SIEM,
Hmm.
but it is something that's definitely happening.
Hmm.
It's just not happening fast enough, and that's why ADR vendors are born and are, somewhat successful. So today you can log, you can get traces, you can get some other type of data, but you probably wouldn't have the robust monitoring stack using a classic SIEM. You would
Okay.
need to have a separate tool. You would not just say, oh yeah, send us all these application traces or all this open telemetry stuff into my SIEM and I'm done. No, you're not done. You're gonna have the data. You're gonna run up a big bill if your SIEM vendor charges per gigabyte or per EPS. but you may not get the insights. I think it's an area of pretty active development, and that's why my impression is that ADR vendors are ahead of the classic SIEM vendors, but history tells us that you're not going to bet against the SIEM.
Hmm.
I'm sorry. I mean, SIEM has slaughtered XDR, SIEM has slaughtered Yuba, SIEM has slaughtered SOAR. All of these are just called SIEM now, parts of SIEM. And to me, ADR is a likely 2027 inclusion in SIEM.
Oh wow. And that's the reason that you said one of the point, very, very interesting point is a lot of companies like ADR companies are acquiring a log management. And correct me if I'm wrong, because the one who going to lead this world in ADR is the one who have a huge amount of data and data pointers they get from logging. So is it wise to say that, that's the reason sorry, that is the primary reason the company going for acquisition, because when they acquire a log management solutions and all that, they also get
Mm-hmm.
access to the data, which help them to improve their detections and improve their response.
So wait. You're asking about like why are they buying log management, or sorry, I didn't get the
Yeah. So let
this
me
from the
let me
explanation.
rephrase
Right. Yeah.
rephrase my
Go ahead.
question. One of the
Yeah.
point you said that, even I agree on that part, is lot of EDR organizations are
Mm-hmm.
uh, acquiring the log management companies. There's a
Right.
lot of acquisition is
Oh,
happening in,
companies. Yeah.
yeah,
Like
I'm
the
sorry for
vendors
that. Yeah,
acquired them.
vendors. Yeah,
Yes, correct.
vendors.
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
like there aren't that many to acquire.
yeah.
So
So,
yes.
so in that case, do you like, the primary reason for this acquisition is that because of data pointers, because the one who going to lead this industry in EDR is the one who have a huge amount of data sets, because by end of the day, it works on the past data.
It's not only that. I think that acquisitions are also because they're realizing that if you don't have the third party telemetry, application
Hmm.
telemetry, configuration from OS or a configuration from cloud backplane in some cases, your original EDR visibility just not going to cut it. So I
Exactly.
think they're expanding to logs because they're realizing that the world is shifting back to more logs
Hmm.
away from endpoint centric view. And it's an interesting like a wave curve when we were like, oh, logs, not much EDR. Well,
Hmm.
EDR didn't exist, not much endpoint. And then EDR is a cool new thing. Everybody got EDR. And it's like, oh yeah, wait, where are my endpoints? I used to have VMs. Now I have this. What? No, I can't deploy an agent. And then we are sliding back to the, well, logs and other traces, like well, what I discussed in ADR.
And the reason, and then I asked this question because, see, if we talk about two controls here, preventive and detective controls.
Mm-hmm.
So preventive is static in nature, but when it comes to detective, are always dynamic in nature, because until unless we don't discover new thing, we cannot able to block. And for EDR,
Correct.
when you're talking about, they need a detection pointers, and only they can able to detect the new pointers, and those telemetry data they will get from this product companies. And that is the reason I asked that question. And thanks for sharing that insight,
Mm-hmm.
and the way you talk about the key pointers, like, acquisition is not about data pointers but also about telemetries and all that, and that's a very good thing. Moving ahead, we're talking about logging. So
Mm-hmm.
what is a good logging look like when you work in a cloud or hybrid workload?
So this is a really good one, and I think that my mind goes to one particular spot after seeing some of the more traditional security operations centers discover cloud and then essentially not being entirely sure what to do. I
Hmm.
think that the telemetry is not which telemetry to collect is kind of an easy air part. I please don't quote me as saying cloud logs are easy. I did say that telemetry is easier than context. And what I mean by this is that if you show a security analyst from 2003 a syslog, it would be kind of clear that such and such machine connected to this machine, there was a login activity, whatever. Like there is an IP address you can resolve internal through, well, internal not always easily, but external through DNS.
Hmm.
So user such and such from source such and such connected to destination, blah. Easy. Today, in many of the logs that you would get, you would have a lot more complicated things. You'd have resource IDs, you have identities, you have workloads, you have other things. You would not have username and IP.
True.
So the way to make sense of it is context. Okay, this resource ID dereferences to this, and this is that system that it does this. So a lot of this is about context. So one
Hmm.
other quote unquote classic blogs I've written was about the role of context in detection. And to me, when I go to cloud, logs change, but logs change less than the context changes. And if you expect, where's my server IP address kind of line of thinking, you'd be severely disappointed because first, there's no server, and second, there's no server IP. So both are gone.
Yeah.
But when you make sense of the logs, you do make use of a pretty copious context store in the cloud. And that to me is the fun part, is the interesting part, is how do you gather the correct context data. The good news is in the cloud, most of it is kind of one API call away. So you would probably get all the answers, but you do need to get them. If you haven't gotten them close to the time of login, they may not be there at the time of the investigation, because you do need to collect this right away, not later. You can't, even in the classic days, I remember situations when it's an internal IP in the logs. Let's see who owned this IP at the time. And at the time meant a month ago. Whoa, that's a challenge. We had the HTTP logs, but guess what? We never collected them.
Exactly.
So the MAC to IP was in the logs, in a special kind of log in that sense, but we didn't collect it because we don't run rules on it. Why collect it? So we're like, we don't know who had this IP. So the knowledge is gone. And in the cloud, with more systems being ephemeral, you need to collect the context right away. You need to brutally enrich what you collect. And I think I put my vendor hat briefly on, is with some of the cloud native solutions that are aware of that, it is clear what enrichment data you need to collect right away. But if you are used to, where's my server IP? Sometimes it's the burden on the user of the system, not on the vendor, to say, oh yeah, I need a lookup table to dereference this, but who's going to populate it? Well, you would, the user. But with a cloud native tool, it's likely that the vendor has populated this, and that it would be done better and done at the time of login and not at some later day through paid. So to me, I'll double down on tech, not necessarily on what logs do I need.
And the reason of Anton asking this question is because we started the podcast with about the SIM history and all that. That's the reason I thought I will ask this question. And and one of my project, I had this requirement about a good logging and all that. I think I'm going to use these cheat sheets for me, which I'm going to apply on the consulting. And thank you for sharing those pointers and wisdom and thoughts.
This is also another thing that gives me flashbacks to the time long gone. I did have a login cheat sheet created together with Lenny Zeltser many, many years ago, and it touched Windows and Linux. Maybe the thing is way more than 10 years old, maybe exactly 10 years old. But it's much harder to make one for today because, see, sure, Windows login changed. Yes, no debate when Microsoft have modified login over the years, but a 2-year-old Windows login cheat sheet is useful.
Yeah.
Cloud audit trail cheat sheet of 2 years ago is not very useful.
Exactly.
So I'm almost scared to venture there, because you'd be like, here's the events you should collect at Amazon Cloud Trail. Whoops. Some of them are gone. Some of them are modified. Some of them split into sub-events. Some of them are now elsewhere. That's tricky to do. So I almost feel like if you make the cheat sheet, I'm super curious to see it, because for the modern era, it's much harder than for the world of, 2010s.
True. And with this question, I have a continuation of the same question: is what are the practical first step toward the cloud native threat detection without boiling into the oceans? Mean to say that we don't need to get into a bunch of packets and all that. What should be a practical first step?
Practical first step. Well,
toward the cloud native threat detection.
Step 0 is you have the tool that is.
Yeah, we have
cloud native and does threat detection.
Without boiling the ocean.
Yes, the first step is still, okay, I'm sorry, but it's still deciding what logs to collect. I know it's very,
exactly.
It's not very, it's very 90s, but it's also, it has, the what is the same, but the how is very different.
Yeah.
So if you go to a modern cloud platform and you crank all the login to on, you may not overrun the system because, hey, we discussed it's cloud native, it will get the data, but you may overrun your wallet. So I feel like today you still have the first decision is, okay, my threat profile What do I have? What are the assets? And that means I should look for X, Y, and Z. Okay, what logs do I need for that? These logs. What logs do I need to investigate? These logs. Do I have compliance obligations? Yes. Do they require certain logs? Yes. Shove them in there. So I still feel like the first step in this is still the step of deciding what logs to collect, but the logs are different. The steps
So
are the
we can say
same,
crown
but the logs are
jewels.
different.
We can say crown
Yeah,
jewels.
like where are the crown jewels and what systems? If something is in Cloud SQL, what do I know about Cloud SQL login? What logs are being produced?
Hmm.
How is system access tracked? Can I log all selects? Should I? Should I log deletes? Should I log backups? Can somebody back up my database and then steal it? I should log that. Like it would go through these steps, and I said the what is the same, but the depth is completely different compared to a SQL Server on Windows in 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
That's a great insight because the reason why I asked this because it's apart from a governance point of view, I asked this question because simply ingesting a logs into the cloud native threat it does not make sense. So until unless we don't have a visibility of what we're going to protect, there's no
Mm-hmm.
point of implementing any solution. And this is the last question. It's a bit off the topic, and I'm sure you also experience that same. Because I do a lot of VCSO projects and all that. And
Mm-hmm.
when we explaining to the leaders, business team about SIEM, XDR, EDR, for them it's a new word. Now we have a limited budget. With a limited budget, we want to pitch our solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Management is only interested in a one solution. So we are giving them idea of SIEM, EDR, XDR, and all that. So
Yep.
what is the one solution I will pick in a limited budget and why? I know it's not a right question, but
Hmm.
sometimes business doesn't understand that. So that's why they have appointed us as a consultant to, we are the subject matter expert for them. So if we have a limited budget, because it vary from country to country, Anton, but this is a very common thing in India.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in Asia Pacific, it's a very common thing. They don't have a complete budget that we can have a full
Right.
stack solution.
So I'm almost going to be almost contrary to my own advice,
Hmm.
to my own points I made. But if I woke up on the morning of August 1st, 2025, and I don't
Hmm.
have anything that provides any visibility in my environment, and there's this Anton guy who just talked about SIEM versus EDR, blah, 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 and he started saying that maybe in the modern era you need SIEM. Actually, as a first step, I would probably still do EDR. The reason I would do EDR and not SIEM, and
Good.
it's like, wait, you're throwing everything away. No, I'm
Hmm.
not throwing everything away. I'm pointing out that you need to fight fire first, and then you need to figure out how to make your house fireproof.
Agree.
EDR is what would tell you if when ransomware comes, hopefully there would be some things you can block. More classic attacker tricks that you would see on the endpoint would likely get picked by that. And the amount of work to get to a detection is shorter than with SIEM.
Hmm.
And I mean, I don't want to joke about it, but like even the person who sort of invented the term EDR, which is me, would still remain the SIEM fan. But in this case, I would vote for EDR as a first step. Uh, there are exceptions to that. Like I can imagine in my head the company that's all Chromebooks and SaaS. If your laptops, if your PCs, if your machines are all Chromebooks and all your business systems are software as a service, you of course do not need EDR. EDR is really stupid in this case. It doesn't do anything. It can't be deployed and it doesn't help. So if you are like the ultra modern environment where it's all hardened, immutable endpoints like Chromebooks, or maybe Android, or maybe Apple iPhone. The point is that you have the OS that's not Windows. Then I would of course do other things. I would not do EDR because EDR would be quite useless. But for most companies with like traditional IT, yeah, EDR does happen before SIEM. I'm sorry. I wish it would be different. I love SIEM. I think SIEM is great. But if you don't have EDR, you're going to get EDR.
And if I say the unit of economics also, ADR can be more from the operation point of view, it is less cost compared
Correct.
to
The,
SM.
the the value and time from
Hmm.
deployment to robust detections is
Hmm.
shorter for EDR. Yeah,
Exactly.
again,
Because in SIM, we need to hire administrator, logs, management,
and
performance,
decide
and
what rules
everything.
to deploy. And EDR vendors do give you useful, resilient rules that for most clients do at least something good. With SIEM, it's sort of true, but uh, if you literally can only buy one thing and you're more of a
Hmm.
traditional company, you're buying EDR.
Hmm. And I'm sure it is not a funny question. I'm sure you also experience. I don't know whether you face this question from the customer, but this is the very common question asked in, at least in APAC and Middle East, when it comes to cost, budget, and all that. And the last question is, single stack, or, if we talk about a security is a full stack solution. One customer prefer full stack and one prefer a distributed. So what is your advice on that area? Like, just we heard about the news about Palo Alto has acquired CyberArk
Oh,
and all that.
platform, like a platform versus best of breed.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like, yeah, how many hours do we have? I almost don't, yeah, I read what Gartner, Forrester, IDC, and others write about this. I read what my former analyst colleagues write in
Hmm.
various private venues on this topic. I mean, I almost don't have a short answer.
Hmm.
And even if I had a short answer, my short answer would be colored by my life experiences. And as my life experience, I've seen that the platform game in cybersecurity has always failed.
Hmm.
It failed for everybody. It failed for Symantec 20 years ago. It failed for many other people. So people who set out to build a broad platform all failed to
Agree.
build a broad platform.
True.
Now they made money in the process. They made some customers satisfied. I'm not debating that. But the vision of consolidation into a platform in cybersecurity has not come to pass. And
Hmm.
wasn't there like widely lampooned? I think he was a CEO of RSA many years ago when he of RSA, the product company, not the
Hmm.
conference, who
Hmm.
said that, oh yeah, in a few years security markets would consolidate, and everybody just laughed at him for being a complete idiot
Hmm.
because it was like there's no sign that the security market would consolidate to 10, 20 players. The point is not that it can't happen. The point is it's constantly happening, and people do choose platforms, and they're okay doing that. But expectation that this would become everybody would buy from 3 vendors
Hmm.
and all other vendors would die is not going to happen. So we will have platforms. We will have successful platforms. Again, Palo and CyberArk argument that you brought up. And of course, other vendors that build broad stacks of products or platforms, they're successful. Everything's good. But there's still thousands of startups. There are
True.
thousands of mid-sized vendors. There are
True.
thousands of other providers, services, managed services that get purchased together with the platform. So my conclusion to this is platform is a yes, but platform only
Is wrong.
and nothing else is a no.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
It can also increase the attack surface. Correct me if I'm wrong.
it can increase attack surface. I don't know. Wait. Why would platform increase the attack surface?
So in terms of, like, we have a one platform which is basically integrated with everything. And if you take a live example of last year CrowdStrike happened,
Mm.
one small update has a bigger downtime. So for me as attacker perspective, I need to target one platform. So I will put my all effort to exploit that platform because kernel will be the same.
Yes, the kind of like the not the ecosystem argument, but the
Hmm.
but the like monoculture argument
Yeah.
is
Yep.
the
Exactly.
is the fun part because
Yeah.
this is the part that's I've observed in the past. It
Hmm.
isn't. I wouldn't say that it's mm, a high risk, but you're right. If you are vendor X or vendor M everywhere, you would, and something breaks in vendor M stack, you may be cooked.
Yeah.
You may be
Exactly.
done, right? and
Exactly.
and I think that argument does apply. I wouldn't lose sleep over that, to be honest, but I think that I would my primary argument is that the platform historically has never covered every need for enough customers.
Agree. And everyone has their
Things
own
change.
capabilities and all that.
Yes, that's exactly right. So I'm not anti-platform. I'm just anti belief that platform is all you need.
Okay. But thanks, Anton. Thanks for sharing a great insight on this particular podcast. And I'm sure I got around more than 10 to 12 points. And for my homework, which I'm going to do, the primary reason of doing this podcast is not only about having a discussions, but also a learning culture which I get
Mhm.
from the speaker. And person like you, still I could not able to imagine my Friday was amazing. It's going to be wrap up on a great time. And you're doing a great job in the security community and keep up doing that. I subscribe to the Google Security podcast on my Spotify. So
Mhm.
weekend one podcast I always listen, and it is always my manifestation to do the podcast with you, and its dream comes true. Thank you so much, Anton.
Perfect. Thanks for inviting me, and happy to, yeah, happy to help and happy to share ideas and discussions. I mean, to me, the podcast, being a podcast guest and the podcast host is always a learning experience. To me, this is, you mentioned something that running a podcast for you was also a learning. We
Yeah,
run a podcast, and for us, it's also a learning. And then Tim says the same, and I tell him the same, that occasionally we learn from guests, occasionally we learn from comments,
exactly.
occasionally we learn from just process of doing it.
Exactly.
And I don't know when this would air, but from the time of recording, I can tell you that you should really get the episode next week. On this would be August 4th episode, and it would be really fun.
That's great. That's really great. And that's why we say there's no one is perfect in security. We don't know from where which we can get the source of learning.
Yeah, exactly.
So thanks, Anton. This is all from our side, team. Do let us know how do you find this podcast, and if you're new to the channel, do subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss the future videos on a similar topics. And I don't know, I'm going to. It's night time still. I feel like I'm in a morning schedule, and because I could not able to sleep today because I had a podcast with Dr. Anton. It's a big thing for me, to be frank. Thanks, Anton. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Take care.